Brinkley's experiments. Dr. Brinkley, a prominent American surgeon, has evolved a new technique of rejuvenation through glandular transplantation, which differs from that of Voronov in that the transplanted gland, which he obtains from goats, is placed adjacent to the senile testicle, thereby augmenting its secretion. Brinkley has made the important observation that the beneficial effects following his operation depend on the degree to which the increased supply of testicular secretions is conserved, and not externally discharged. To ensure such conservation, he blocks the implanted gland, thus preventing the external passage of its secretions and guaranteeing their entrance into the circulation. If the implanted gland is not so protected by being blocked, there is a danger that it will run down in a few months as a result of external discharges. Patients who have been thus operated upon are cautioned by the surgeon against sexual indulgence following the operation, as this is liable to undo its effects. Dr. Brinkley attributes the invigorating effects following the operation to the action not only of the internal secretion of the sex glands, but also to the conserved external secretion. He notes an inverse relationship between the amount of sex secretions externally discharged and the quantity of quote-unquote sex hormones absorbed into the blood. We shall see that such a relationship lies at the basis of the famous Steinic method of rejuvenation through vasoligature, or ligature of the vas deferens. Concerning the Brinkley technique, Fielding writes, quote, "The mere transplantation of the youthful gland is only the first step. In its new location, the gland must be safeguarded or blocked, and not left to short-circuit and run down in a few months. Blocking, Dr. Brinkley explains, is a term used in his technique of tying off or blocking away parts of the secretion of the newly implanted gland, because if it were allowed to remain unrestrained, the patient would be given to lascivious use of his power, and, as the majority of patients operated upon are representative business and professional men of the country, who are run down mentally, physically, and sexually, they are protected from abusing their recreated vigor by blocking a portion of the secretions from the animal gland." Unquote. Another writer, Atkinson, comments, quote, "Surgeons performing this class of operations invariably caution their patients against subsequent excessive sexual indulgence, and preach vigorously the doctrine of the conservation of the life forces immanent in the sexual gland secretions. Their instructions to the patient, and the treatment itself, are based upon the principle that the vital fluids generated in the male and female genital glands, the testes and the ovaries, which are not expended in the reproductive process, are taken up by the blood and then absorbed by the various tissues of the body, strength, health, vigor, and improved functioning power thus being imparted to them. Indeed, in many cases, the surgeons have employed certain methods well known to physicians to strain the reinvigorated men from sexual indulgence for at least a year following the operation, in order that he may conserve and receive the benefit of the reabsorbed internal secretions of the genital glands, which has been stimulated to renewed activity by the operation. These surgeons vary this practice only in exceptional cases, in which offspring are desired by the reinvigorated patient. It is generally held by the surgeons practicing this method that overindulgence in the sexual act, following the reinvigoration caused by the implantation of the goat's gland, will defeat and nullify the benefits which normally arise from the increased stimulation. Conservation and regeneration is the slogan of these practitioners. Dr. Brinkley explains his own position in the following words, quote, "I have not swerved from my original conception that the source of all human energy is sex energy, which is another way of saying that the glandular system of man is a chained system, or series of connected loops, mutually assisting or depressing each other by their secretions, of which the genital glands would seem to have the power of most directly stimulating, and in a measure dominating, the human body and mind by their particular kind of hormones, manufactured by the sex glands and distributed in the bloodstream for the nourishment of all tissues of the body. The tendency of modern endocrinologists is sharply to distinguish between the function of the external and internal secretions of the gonads, in respect to the part played by their hormones in the circulation of the blood, giving the whole credit, or the major part of the credit, of the noted upbuilding of the body as a whole, its glandular, nervous, muscular, and vegetative systems, to the activity of the interstitial gland, apart from the effect of the hormones of the external secretory process. But this is by no means my own conclusion. It is briefly my view that both the external and internal secretions of the gonads, sex glands collectively, are equally valuable to the upbuilding of body tissue, and that the gonads themselves are not merely a link in the chain of endocrines, so that, to make this point exactly clear to the layman, defective thyroids can be most easily repaired by repair of the gonads, and so with all the glands of the chain, I have demonstrated fairly that the position of the gonads in the chain of the endocrines is the master position, and that the well-being of all the endocrines is exactly dependent upon the well-being of the gonads.